Hey guys, this is Caleb with DSLR Video Shooter, and today we're going to take a close look at the Aputure COB lights. Aputure recently reached out to me asking if I wanted to take a look at these COB lights, and obviously I said yes. These are pretty affordable, and I really wanted to see how they compare to even more affordable lights that are similar, some from Alzo that I've been using for years. So what these essentially are, as you can see here, a fairly large light, but the beauty is they have a massive chip, excuse all the rattling sounds, in the center that outputs a ton of light. So right in the center there, we have a small cluster of LEDs on a single board. So this gives off the illusion of a single light source. This means that we can cut the light and have lots of output without hundreds of LED little bulbs that can make weird shadows and cause other issues. You can get the COB in two different color temperature flavors. We have the COB120D, which stands for daylight, even though it's a 6,000 Kelvin instead of 56. And then in the back here I have the C120T for tungsten. This one has a color temperature of 3,000 Kelvin. These lights come in a really nice case with all the necessary accessories to get them up and running. In the bag, you're going to find a light with a reflector hood, an external control unit, all the cables to connect everything, the power supply, a small remote with a battery, the warranty and manuals, and stickers, lots and lots of stickers. To get these lights up and running, you can put the lights on a stand, connect the XLR cable from the light to the control unit. From there, you can connect the control unit to the power supply brick, and finally into the wall for power, or one of these sweet squid cable splitters that I have and love. You can check those out in the description. Now, depending on how you use your lights, this control unit is going to be a really good thing or a very bad thing. First of all, the good things, it's great that it's separate because you could raise a light or put a light in a ridiculous area and still be able to control it remotely. The other great thing about it is it reduces heat and weight of the actual light. So you can see here, it's actually pretty small. There's not much to the light when you consider how much output it gives you. So having this separate really allows Aputure to keep the size down, and it's going to help keep the heat down, because with these high-powered LED chips, you get a ton of heat you have to deal with and send somewhere. Not nearly as bad as, massive tungsten fixtures that we've used in the past, but it's still a decent amount of heat, so that has to go somewhere. And when you have all this electronics built into one box that's outputting heat, that's a lot more difficult to do. But the downside is you have another brick you have to manage, including the power supply. So there's all this stuff you have to mount somehow. Luckily, Aputure has included this little strap that has a little quick release on it, so you can just hang this on the light itself or a light stand, and that'll help you kind of manage things. On the actual controller itself, we have a really nice power button with a little LED light around it, and then there's a display giving us our output percentage. So I can turn the light up here, and that is 100%. I can go all the way back down to 9. The dial is actually really nice. I'm a big fan of that. And then we also have a couple other items on the screen of the unit. We have a channel and group indicator. We have 3 channels and 4 different groups. We'll talk about those a little bit later. And then we have buttons to control those. We also have a forced or auto fan option. On the top of the unit, we have the connector that goes to the light, and it's a really nice locking connector. We also have a little antenna that folds on the top, and that's for using the remote. And then finally on the back, we have a battery solution. You can get it as a V mount or an Anton Bauer Gold mount with a nice quick release. So you can battery power this. Just make sure you have enough current, and there's more information about that on Aputure's website. Regarding the light itself, starting at the bottom, we have a standard 5/8 female light stand mount. It also has an integrated umbrella slot, so if you want to use umbrellas, you're ready to go without any other accessories. The light has a really nice handle on the back, which is great not only for moving the light around and changing the angle, but also for dealing with the weight that comes from the Bowens mount. So if you add a really large, softbox like I'm using right here to light this, that's a lot of weight. So it's nice to have a handle to really grab the light and position it however you want. Build quality is outstanding on this. It's a nice nice black all aluminum build. This light does have a Bowens mount, so out of the box you get this nice little hood with a reflector. It helps add a little bit of a spot to the light out of the box, just like it is here. You're going to get a more widespread beam. This is going to tighten up that beam a little bit. You can also get some other accessories that have Bowen mounts from either Aputure or other manufacturers. So one of them is an actual lens that you can put on here and focus the light even further. We're talking crazy spot level focusing. Another great option is the Aputure light dome, which is what I'm using to light most of my videos these days. You can also pick up barn doors, snoots. You can also pick up barn doors, snoots, all kinds of different accessories, and really get the most out of this light and this awesome Bowens mount. When it comes to remote use, first, unfortunately, you have to turn the power control units on for each light before you can use the remote, but that kind of makes sense. We can't have the remote constantly on or the lights constantly on waiting for the signal. And you can use one remote for several different lights. So right now I have both lights on channel 1 and group A. So I'm going to turn group A on, which will turn both lights on, and then I can turn up both lights at the same time. Turn them both off, on, lots of flexibility. And on the control unit, I can also switch it up. So let's say I want to control them independently. I'm going to take my daylight version right here, and I'm going to move him to group B. So now I can turn off A and B separately, like so. I can also turn A all the way down, like that. So if you run a studio or just want some flexibility on set, this is going to be a great solution, and it's pretty powerful what you can do with all the different lights. Output on these lights are pretty ridiculous. So I'm going to show you this light compared to my Alzo 3000, which I'm using right now to light me. And I've been using that light for years. And finally, the YN600. So if you've watched my video on 10 LED lights between 50 and 100 bucks, that's the brightest one of that group. So we'll see how that compares to this light. For this test, I'm using the A6500, and I have it set to f10 and ISO 200. On the left, I'll show a waveform so you can see where these lights are landing. Surprisingly, the Alzo is actually the brightest, but it has some edge color distortion, and the color doesn't look quite as accurate, and the Alzo has a pretty loud fan, especially compared to the silent Aputure. Then in second place, we have the YN600, but it also has a fan that can be a little noisy, and the color isn't quite as good as the Aputure. And finally, we have the Aputure, and you can see the color looks really, really good, but it isn't quite as bright as the other two lights. Now let's check out the sound level of the fan itself. I'm going to have this light and my Alzo, which I know is quite noisy, at the same distance from the microphone. We'll do 6 inches, and we'll see what the sound difference is, if we can hear this light at all, and how bad my Alzo is compared to this one. Now let's go over a couple different setups using this light. I'm going to swap out my Alzo for this light so we can see if there's any color differences there. And we're also going to do a couple different setups. All right, so I have the COB120T, so the tungsten version, in the softbox, ready to rock and roll. It's on. Here is the light I was using. This is the Alzo 3000. There's several different models. It also has a giant chip. You'll notice the size, and this is definitely heavier than this light. I'll put the two side by side so you can see the difference. This has everything built in. So the power, everything is hooked up. There's only one power cord coming out of it, which is nice, but it doesn't really have a dimmer. It has like several steps of light instead of a full, 10 to 100. And the fan noise is really loud. So yeah, this is with the softbox. Really nice soft light using that Bowens mount. This is the Aputure light dome, which is an accessory from Aputure that you can pick up for 150 bucks. But you can use any Bowens mount softbox. So now what I want to do is go ahead and put the lens, Fresnel lens, on this light, and we'll hit that on the background. And here I have the lens. So the way it works is there is a knob that you loosen up, and then you just pull the lens out or push it in. Pretty straightforward. And construction quality on this, the lens itself is really nice. There's some metal here, but there's also a lot of plastic. The other thing is, we'll see in a second, is there's a bunch of vents here because this puppy gets pretty warm on the front end. So there's a bunch of slots here to keep the airflow going. That's going to let a little bit of light leak through. So let's go ahead and mount this puppy. Just like that. And I'm going to spin it around here and turn it on. And it looks blue because our white balance is set to tungsten, or 3000 Kelvin. So I'm going to loosen that knob and I'm going to move the lens in and out to show you what all you can do. So there you can see that is maximum spottiness right there. Let me loosen it up, move it around. So you can see pretty amazing. And the background behind me is about 7 to 8 feet away. So the closer you get to whatever you're hitting the light with, obviously that circle is going to become smaller. Pretty nice. And then I'll open it up. And there is the maximum size. All right, guys, we have another setup. You can see I have got the light right here just to show you roughly where it is, very close to me. And it is bouncing off of a 5-in-1 reflector, but I'm using the white side of the 5-in-1 reflector. And that is bouncing off of that, hitting me as a key light. I need a little bit of fill, but I usually use that white source as my fill just out of frame over there. So yet another setup. For this, I'm just using the hood. If I had higher ceilings, I'd be able to get more of a Rembrandt look, which I'm close to, but I would need to be a little more like that, where I would get the triangle action there. So yet another setup, such a versatile light. So for final recommendations, I love this light. You can really do anything with it. You can put it in a softbox and get a beautiful soft key. You can use it as a spotlight, add a snoot or that awesome lens we took a look at, and really get a spotty light. You can use it as a bounce light, a background spotlight, so many different uses. So if you have 1 or 2 of these in your kit, you can really do anything with them. There's only really 2 complaints I have after using these for several weeks. First is the Bowens mount feels really loose. So that happens a lot. If the light gets moved or the stand gets bumped at all, you're going to hear that sound. The other thing I don't really care for is the control unit being separate, or just having 3 things to manage: the light itself, the control unit, and the power supply. Personally, I don't really need the controller to be super far away from the light, but I understand the need for that, and keeping the weight down on the light unit itself is really nice. So that's kind of a double-edged sword. And the only other thing is the 6000 color temperature. I would have been nice if it was closer to 56, but sometimes it's hard to source the LEDs. I don't know the reason for that. All that said, this is a fantastic light for the money and incredibly versatile. So many different things you can do with it. So that is going to do it for this review of the Aputure COB120D and T. Let me know if you guys have any questions at all. I'll do my best to help you out in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.